Well, here we are, Friday, April 12th, on the YouTube Diehards YouTube channel, the On the Hot Seat thing we do every Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Thanks for coming. We'll give everyone a minute to show up. Come on in, kids. The water's fine. I'll see you in the chat when you jump in. We'll answer questions. We'll have a good old time today. Do this every Wednesday, as I mentioned, 7 p.m. every Saturday. Hi, Andrea. Thanks for coming. Every Saturday at noon. If it's not anything else going on, we might have some issues during the draft weekend, but we'll see about that. You can also catch me, of course, on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. I'll be on Saturday night flying solo. Mike Dempsey on a golf vacation. And I'll be doing the usual 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern Time thing. Have some great guests lined up. Have a great guest lined up today as well. Jamie Calandro. You know him from the Football Diehards website. You see him at Fantasy Pros. And, of course, Fantasy Team Advice on Twitter at Fan Team Advice. Follow him on Twitter at JAC3600. He is Jamie Calandro. And we'll bring him right in here to chat with us. And there he is. Jamie, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing great, Bob. Thanks for having me on with you. I'm looking forward to it and get ready to. We're 3 weeks from the draft here, so it's starting to heat up. So I appreciate you having me on. It is.
And yeah, the draft is like dominant in the news, but there's a lot of things going on. I usually don't bring the guests on until after we get into the news, but some of the news is related to teams you like, and by teams you like, I mean the New York Football Giants in particular. So the news today was Saquon Barkley is not going to sign his franchise tender. We're going to talk about running backs a little more just in general, but this seems to be something that the running backs are dealing with, not getting paid like they want. The reports middle of last season were the Giants offered him around $12 million. He wasn't okay with that. Maybe $14 million. The Giants want him to remain a Giant until he's no longer playing. How realistic do you think that is? And is this really any concern at this point in time, right? He knows the offense, played in it last year, played well, doesn't need to get in the OTAs, and not a lot of need to put himself at risk, right?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, you mentioned, you teased it that this is my team. So as a Giants fan, you worry about every time something's not going perfect with your team. But I mean, when you're looking at this objectively, I don't see this as anything to worry about right now. The fact that he's not going to start in the non-mandatory off-season program, I think right now we should be remaining calm about the Giants in this situation. Once he starts to threaten missing games, I think that's when you start to freak out. But it's a July 15th deadline that they have to work out a long-term extension with him. He says he wants to be a Giant for life. I think that he's going to be willing to put up with being franchise tagged once, just based on this thing, if that's the way it is. So, I mean, it depends how good the offense is in year two. I think if it looks like the 2022 offense, that you have to keep him as long as he's healthy. He's the only one on that team right now that is like the game-breaking talent, and they need somebody on that team if they're going to take that step forward. But I'm not really that concerned right now with Barkley's situation.
Greetings to everyone in the chat. Appreciate everyone coming. Ryan, Andrea Mess said hello. Jeff Clark, Scott Kobe in the house, Mr. Scampers, James, thanks, Albert. Thanks to everyone for coming. If you have questions, as usual, work them into the chat, and I'll work them into the conversation here as we go through things. We have a lot of things we want to touch about. That's the other reason I brought Jamie on a little earlier than usual, is there's tons of stuff going on, just in general. And so just before we get off the Giants, I just want to, ask, what is a realistic expectation for offensive improvement? I thought going into last year, Brian Daboll was going to make this offense better, and he did. He made it better than I expected. I thought it would be a little more incremental. I thought it was a pretty good jump. We've got Daniel Jones locked in now. Obviously, Darren Waller shows up. There's still some work to be done at wide receiver, I believe, but we'll see how that plays out. Just as things stand right now, how much more improvement should we expect this year? What's realistic?
I think it's definitely going to improve this year, and I think they did. They're handling the wide receiver problem the correct way. That they kind of said from day one that they're not looking for a splashy, top tier wide receiver one that they can overpay. I'm perfectly fine with them not going after DeAndre Hopkins. I know there was a lot of talk about that, and then Odell, who is just gone to Baltimore now. But you mentioned Darren Waller. I mean, that's a huge red zone target for Daniel Jones that he really was kind of missing this past year. I think that'll really help. And some of these wide receivers, while they're not big names, just going with depth at the position to join the ones they have. Paris Campbell, even someone like Jamison Crowder, who might not even make the team. It's just a depth signing. That's what they really need. I think they'll take a wide receiver in this draft, but I don't necessarily think it's going to be a first-round wide receiver either. I think they can wait and address their interior line in the first round. They can address corner, which are equally, if not even more, areas of need for them right now after these signings.
Yeah, you mentioned the wide receivers. We've had John Laub and Matt Waldman on the last couple of weeks talking about the receiving class in general, which is perceived to be not super high end, but like Matt Waldman said last week, I mean, if we look back in hindsight, some of these guys that were maybe not as high profile as players we've seen drafted in recent years, and they're all fantastic. The Jamar Chases, the Justin Jeffersons, and et cetera. Even if there's not players at that level, that this might end up being a much better class than we think because it's a little more even quality, just not as super high. And so Mr. Scamper's missing voluntary OTA is not a big deal. I agree. Andrea worries when July is coming. Scott Kobe. Do you want to see the no? So we got that dialed in. By the way, Scott, Jamie, we were talking about this offline. Scott Fishbowl, going back to Boston in a number of places. So we'll be talking about that in the coming weeks and months. I know Scott Kobe enjoyed his time in Boston last year with you, Jamie. So
and this is an all-star cast that joined us for the DFS show all year too. Some of these names.
Oh yeah, we got the usual assortment of smart people in here, and hopefully a few others. And so we'll dive into here a little bit. Just again, we're from FootballDiehards.com, people. It's a website. It's fantastic. You should go there. If you want to sign up early, use the promo code Diehards, get 15% off. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Do all the YouTubey things. I know Mr. Scampers is already on top of that because he always is. Hit the like button, hit the dislike button. I don't really care. Just do something to make the algorithm all happy. So beautiful. I mentioned the Sirius show. I'll be solo Saturday night. Dempsey away. The Harris will play 7 to 9 p.m. Then we have our draft schedule. We'll be doing a draft special Monday, the 24th, I believe. We'll do a special show 10 p.m. to midnight, Dempsey and I. Then the draft itself, Dempsey and I will be on along with John Hansen and Jeff Ratcliffe for the entirety of the first round. We'll be going from 8 until midnight. Then Friday night, I'll be doing a solo post-draft show from 11 to midnight. Saturday, Dempsey and I will be going all throughout the entirety of the draft, I think from 4 to 7 p.m. or for the bulk of it. Sunday, we'll be doing the post-draft, post-draft from 5 to 7. And then Monday night, we'll do another wrap-up show. So a lot of draft content coming on Sirius. The Football Diehards will be a big part of it, so don't miss out on that. Odell Beckham's name has been brought up here, and let's bring it up a little further. I remain skeptical. We haven't seen Odell be Odell-like in a couple of years, but the last time we saw him have a 1,000-yard season was Todd Monken, who is now the offensive coordinator of the Baltimore Ravens. We have questions at quarterback. We'll see what happens with the quarterback. We'll talk about that a little bit. But where are you at on Odell in general? He's been kind of going off in best balls right now as a wide receiver 4, which I thought was a little aggressive. Maybe it's still aggressive, but he's probably going to move up, right? Any development tends to work in a player's favor. Where are you at on him right now?
I'm fine with it. I've taken him a couple of times in best ball prior to him having a team because I figured, just his kind of his flashiness alone and his talent on the field is enough that you want to take flyers. I don't love the spot unless Lamar Jackson is the quarterback there, which I still don't think he's going to be. But I mean, you
don't.
I don't. I think
We're
they're going to move
the lead
on
here.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think he's going to be
finish
somewhere
out the
else.
thought on Lamar. We'll get into that because I don't. We'll disagree here, but let's work on this a little bit. Go ahead and finish your thoughts on Odell.
I think if he wants to stay, he's gonna have to soften that stance on the fully guaranteed contract, which he's said. I don't think any team's gonna give these players this at all after what Cleveland did with Watson. But I do think that he's gonna wind up somewhere else. I think unless the team's not willing to pay him. But I mean, someone like Indianapolis and Atlanta that's sitting there in a place where Baltimore can take a quarterback, if they're willing to do it and they're building the pieces around it. Indianapolis makes a lot of sense to me for a team to trade for him. I mean, they're sitting fourth. They give that fourth pick for him, and then what else? Baltimore will be amenable to that if they can draft a quarterback there and just do a reset. So I'm saying he's going to Indianapolis, but that's based on nothing. But kind of gut and reading between the lines a little bit. It's very likely that he remains in Baltimore. I think Odell is fine, but I mean, this is a team that Mark Andrews led the team in 847 in receiving yards with 847. Next highest was Demarcus Robinson, was under 500. So there's nowhere to go but improve for that passing offense. But I mean, to really get an Odell ceiling year, you got to have somebody capable throwing him the ball, and I'm wary until that happens.
Pro Bowl master Tyler Huntley might not be it. There may be some quarterback situation change. So I'll just start with this. I do think that, like, if Lamar is not a Baltimore Raven, I think the scenario you laid out seems like the most likely outcome, that it would be in Indianapolis, and it's because they don't think they're going to get the quarterback they want, or they don't want to move up, or somebody jumps ahead of them in the draft order. Maybe that would lead them to do that. But I do think that's a pretty high price to pay. The price you're going to have to pay to get his services, plus what you're going to have to pay for him. Look at who's here. Eric Romoff's in the house. Hello, Eric.
Eric talked me off the ledge with Tyler Huntley a couple of times in DFS on our show, so I'm well familiar with his downside.
I do think that, like, the most likely outcome here is so we say fully guaranteed. I don't know that we know he wants fully guaranteed. There's been some talk that maybe all he wants is more guaranteed money than Deshaun Watson. So depending on what this deal ends up being, they might be able to pull that off, right? It's not a fully guaranteed contract. So the rest of the owners don't come destroy Steve Bisciotti like they want to destroy Jimmy Haslam. By the way, kudos to Jimmy Haslam for throwing his entire division into disarray, right? So the Ravens are dealing with the Lamar Jackson problem. Soon Cincinnati's going to have a Joe Burrow issue, and they're going to have to pay him. So, as much as I'd like to slag on Jimmy Haslam, this may have been a 4D chess move or something. We'll find out. And we're going to talk about Deshaun Watson a little bit before the night is over here. So, but I think he goes back, because I don't think the fully guaranteed contract is really what he's after. Also, the reporting that he was part of the recruiting of Odell Beckham to Baltimore kind of lends a little credence. We'll see. Again, anything can happen, right? And like in Jamie's scenario, again, is like, to me, on the range of possible outcomes, it's up there. I still think Lamar being a Raven is the most likely, but that brings up another question: is how long does that take to happen? If it does happen, does he miss a bunch of the installation of the offense? Todd Monken has downplayed the notion that that'll be a big issue. Well, nicely done, Todd Monken, but obviously it's not the best thing I've ever asked the Green Bay Packers of a year ago. If having your quarterback around for OTAs when you have young receivers coming in is a great thing. So, speaking of that, New York Jets. Sounds like they'll have a new offense, Jamie. New quarterback, at least. Aaron Rodgers. Seems likely this will get done. I can't see it not getting done. But there's been some interesting things thrown out there. Pro Football Talk, as they often do, throws some things against the wall. One of them, the suggestion, David Bakhtiari kind of hinted at it, could. By the way, James Froy put a question here. Can OBJ be as effective as he was several years ago? For me, it's no. Do you want to just give a short answer there, Jamie?
No, I don't think so either. I definitely think he immediately becomes the wide receiver one in Baltimore by default, right. But you're definitely not getting production of several years ago. I mean, there's too much. He's older now. They fall off a cliff, and those are some major injuries he's got to bounce back from. So I would temper expectations.
He's flashed, but it's been 3 years since it's been major input. So David Bakhtiari suggested maybe the Packers would be willing to pay Aaron Rodgers just to stay away. If that somehow comes to pass, and I'm Aaron Rodgers, I'm in a dark room with a big pile of money for the entire year. But I think he does want to go to Green Bay or go to New York. He said that's his intention. We'll see how it plays out. We're going to pretend for our purposes that he is going to play out. As Eric says, it would be very Jets for the A-Rod deal to fall through. There's a lot of relationships here, people, like relationships between Joe Douglas and Brian Gutekunst, the GMs for both teams. They were scouts together at various points. And so the head coaches, good friends, Matt LaFleur and Robert Saleh. So I think this eventually happens. It's just a matter of working out the values of what I've heard is that the compensatory values for depending on how long Rodgers plays, working out those kind of this if that, that if this. So New York Jets offense with or without Aaron Rodgers. Let's say with Aaron Rodgers, because we're going to pretend it's going to be with Aaron Rodgers. Garrett Wilson, I've talked about this before. Seems like he's already at a ceiling. Like this move is already baked into his draft cake. But the rest of the pieces around him, what do you think of those, or do we know what all of those are going to be just yet?
Well, yeah, I agree with you. I mean, Garrett Wilson's ADP right now is I think reflective of Aaron Rodgers being his quarterback. And but I mean, if he goes there, which I agree, I think he's going to eventually. Every ancillary piece in the Jets' passing offense has to get a bump here. I mean, they were at quarterback purgatory last year. I mean, and you're talking about not just an upgrade, but an upgrade to the most efficient passer of all time. So, the rumors that Rodgers requested New York sign Lazard to complement Garrett Wilson. Elijah Moore is gone. I think Alan Lazard's fantasy value is solid in New York as long as Rodgers is the quarterback. I think you can pretty much say that for every piece in the passing game there as well. I think their offense will be way more efficient with Rodgers under center, and I'm kind of drafting best balls accordingly right now.
I am as well. And I think that's the safest bet. Look, like Aaron Rodgers ultimately has the power to force the hand by just showing up and saying, "Oh, that's $60 million. I would like that now." And they're kind of in a bad spot. I think they're going to want to move on from that because clearly they're ready to move on to Jordan Love. So am I. I was just starting one of my Dynasty League drafts, a Superflex draft with some industry-heavy hitters. It's a two-quarterback league. Jordan Love is on my quarterback list. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do with my Josh Allen and Derek Carr shares involved there as well. The Green Bay offense, so I've said this before, we don't have enough information to make really solid, takes on Jordan Love, but we do know what the Packers think of him. Obviously, they think enough. Look, you don't move on from a quarterback, especially a four-time MVP, unless you think you've got a pretty good replacement on hand. We have not seen this, but they have. Where are you at on the values of the players around him? Christian Watson seems like he's been going at a reasonable value. And so are the other pieces. I mean, Romeo Doubs is, I find, really appealing, very late in drafts, a kind of a free square guy with maybe some upside. But where are you at on these pieces of the offense, including the backfield?
I'm higher on Watson than I think most here. I mean, just given the fact that he was fourth in yards after catch, only Deebo Samuel and Jalen Waddle and Rondale Moore, believe it or not, were ahead of him in that stat. So, I mean, even with the quarterback situation being what it is, I mean, I think Watson is somebody that is easily a wide receiver too and has top 12 upside no matter who's throwing him the ball there. Yards per route run, he was top 12, third in fantasy points per route run. So I'm all in on him regardless. I agree with you. People like Dobbs at the back end. That's perfectly fine for a best ball pick. The backfield, I've been liking both guys at cost, Jones and Dillon. I was a little wary on Jones at first because Dillon was going so much later and he's in a contract year, but I think I think Jones is a good passing game complement to Jordan Love. I think the field, from what I've seen, at least on Twitter, is people think Jordan Love is more of a running quarterback than he actually is. I mean, he hasn't done any running in the NFL at all. So I don't think that threatens Jones's check down percentage. You remember when Devontae Adams left, we saw a 26% target share from Aaron Jones, and I can see that carrying over with Love under quarterback as well.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. By the way, some of the values here, Jordan Love is quarterback 24 and over the last month and a half of best balls. So I've been investing a fair amount. Getting him as a third quarterback is not unusual. I think that's a pretty fair play. Aaron Rodgers not going any higher. I mean, not going. I think he's a value here. What do you think? And what is the price right now? Quarterback 17. Players going ahead of him: Russell Wilson, Geno Smith, Jared Goff. I like a lot of them. Daniel Jones. I like a lot of guys going ahead of him, but I think that's a pretty reasonable value. The guys going after him: Derek Carr, Matthew Stafford, Kenny Pickett, Kyler Murray, etc. So I think those are pretty fair prices. Watson's going as wide receiver 30 at this point. I agree with you as well. I think that's probably going to end up being a value. And we'll see what some of these other pieces. I know the running backs, for me, it's kind of hard. I feel like I have a hard time getting away from A.J. Dillon. Right, Aaron Jones running back 20 right now over the last month and a half of best balls. So I'm getting the cheaper piece, the running back 32, A.J. Dillon, a fair amount, and hoping that he comes through. And I think it's entirely possible. Like, again, we don't know what the quarterback situation is going to be. We're hoping Jordan Love is as capable as the Packers think he is. But they might, I think Matt LaFleur's has wanted the last couple of years to lead on the run, and it hasn't worked out as well as he wanted. Any validity to that theory in your mind, Jamie?
You broke up a little. Can you just repeat that last one?
I think Matt LaFleur the last couple of years has wanted to run the ball more, but I think circumstances have kind of kept him from that. One year was Aaron Rodgers playing really well. Last year they were not playing well as an offense and didn't get good opportunities. Do you think he'd like to run the ball more with Jordan Love?
Yeah, I would say so for sure. And in that scenario, I think you're right that Dillon is the better value. I mean, if you look that, the second half of the season, Dillon had 14 carries inside the 10, while Jones only had 5. So, I mean, if that carries over at all, it's the same coaching staff, and there's really no reason why it shouldn't. I think you're getting him at cost at a much better value than Jones. But still, in PPR formats, I really like Jones as well at his role too. But I do think Dillon is going to be that red zone, almost Jamal Williams type player there for them.
Back to the Jets quickly. Nathaniel Hackett is the offensive coordinator. Our memory of him is not fond because it didn't work out in Denver. But he is buddies with Aaron Rodgers, Alan Lazard as well. They seem to really like him. But in general, as a play caller over the course of his NFL career, he has not been great. The best offenses he's been involved with were Green Bay, which he wasn't the play caller. Does that add any level of concern for you, or are you just happy that that Rodgers and these guys are going to have a guy that they're in on?
I mean, I think if you're using it as a tiebreaker between some of those other guys you mentioned, like Goff, Geno Smith, something like that, I think it's fair to lean their way. With that being the tiebreaker, I'm fine getting Rodgers, but yeah, I know I think that's a legitimate concern. I mean, he's got a history of not being a good play caller. I mean, what if the Jets offense is slow? I mean, their defense is one of the best in the league. They want to slow the game down, and Rodgers is just a kind of a game manager in 2023. I think that's in the realm of possibilities for them.
I think we agree on this one. Let's move forward to the running backs in general. I just kind of want to talk about some generalities here in what the NFL is doing and what we're doing as fantasy managers. People who have been to these live streams a lot know kind of how I feel. Scott Kobe for sure does. I'm investing a little more heavily in the passing attack than the running backs. And, the Barkley thing we talked right at the top of the show, is kind of indicative of this. Like, okay, let's look at the franchise tags for the positional players. The running backs are at the bottom of the heap of the skill players, right, at $10.9 million. They're behind tight ends and well behind wide receivers and obviously well behind quarterbacks. So the running back value as the NFL sees it versus running back value as how fantasy managers see it. I mean, we're still drafting running backs early, right? It's just the league views them as a fungible commodity. So, like, while I'm investing more heavily in the passing attack, we need running backs. As long as you land one that has the job right now, I think we're in pretty good shape. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, but that title is getting fewer and farther between with every year we watch the sport. I will say, based on the trends of my own best balls this year, I'm notoriously running back heavy drafter. Last year's Scott Fishbowl, I took 5 in the first 7 rounds. I always draft that way just because I like to go for guaranteed touches, but I've found myself leaning away from that this year. Other than like McCaffrey in the top 3, I've liked the receivers in the first round more, just getting those top tier receivers more than the top tier running backs this year, just because of that scenario. There's not many 80-90% carry share running backs in the NFL anymore, and we kind of got to adjust to that.
Yeah, four running backs in the top 12 of current Best Ball 10's ADP, and I think that is reflective of that. In past years, 8 running backs are not unusual in the first round. It was kind of to turn that thing around. And one of the players going in the first round, Travis Kelce, by the way, still at 4, and I'm still investing heavily, except when Jamie or Dempsey or somebody else steals them from me. I'm still getting my shares. There's always someone stealing from us. So Austin Eckler is another player who is not happy with what he's making. He would like a little more. I don't think he's going to get a little more. Any reason to dial back, due to the uncertainty? I feel pretty confident that he's going to be a Los Angeles Charger. They're not trading him, I don't think, but anything's possible. But if he were to go somewhere, if you're drafting early like we are, and we are drafting way more than we should be, given the information at hand, is there a reason to be concerned about him? I mean, if he lands somewhere else, probably going to be in a pretty good spot, right?
If he lands somewhere else, he's in the best possible spot he can be right now for what his type of game is, and for Brandon Staley's willingness to pound him into the red zone the way he continues to do. I think it's worth being concerned about him. I agree with you that I think he's going to be back with them. And if that's the case, then I am all in on him as a top 2 running back. Once again, he was my RB1 going into last year. And I'm comfortable with thinking about doing that again this year. But the uncertainty right now, I've kind of dropped him back. I have him below Jonathan Taylor, below Saquon Barkley, even below someone like Kenneth Walker, who's not as involved in the passing game, but someone who is young, on fresh legs, like his role in the offense a lot more. I just think if Eckler is not a Charger, there's nowhere to go but down for his production. Unless I'm missing a blatantly obvious team, but I don't think I am.
Unless the Bengals get rid of Joe Mixon.
Yeah, right.
There could be circumstances where it works out okay, but it's a pretty narrow band. I would agree with you there. Scott wants to know if we should dial back on Eckler if the Chargers draft Bijan Robinson. Yes. And also, nobody's dialing back on Bijan Robinson. I mean, it's crazy. Chargers are the best possible spot for running back other than the Mixon-less Cincinnati. I agree with that. But that's absolutely
a possible outcome.
Right. I've talked to a beat writer who said that's going to be the kind of player they'll target. I don't know if they'll get him. The buzz is kind of going, so we'll find out there in general. But one of the advantages as we find the running back values being depressed, or more receivers and quarterbacks as well going the first 2 rounds, you're getting some values later on at running back. Some of those players that I find myself taking a fair amount of, Najee Harris slipping down in the 3rd round on occasion. I'm willing to play that workload. I still think it's viable. James Conner going later. I know I can't quit him. I'm like broke back Conner here. But I think the workload's good. I mean, what are the Cardinals going to do early in the season? I mean, without Kyler Murray, until Kyler Murray gets back, and maybe the draft will screw all this up as well. But there are a handful of places. I think Miles Sanders gets good run, and he's fairly cheap. Josh Jacobs is pushed down a little bit. So the depressed prices, there's an advantage to that, right? Or at least something to gain there.
Yeah, for sure, and that's a big reason I'm comfortable waiting to the point that I've not done before. And you mentioned some of the guys I like. I add David Montgomery to that thing too. I think he is in a situation that's better even than when he's done in Chicago. It seems because DeAndre Swift, who everybody loves to jump all over, me included. I think Montgomery is in a perfect offense for his production and for what he's going to do, and he's going around that time too. So I'm actually good. I'm good waiting. It's hard to say, and it's even harder to do, but I've been doing it.
Right, and there are guys even down further that I'm if not comfortable, at least willing, right, to jump on as we get way later in the draft. And I mean that extends all the way down to the Cordero Pattersons of the world, who I'm not eagerly drafting him. But when I get down into the double-digit rounds and he's still there, I'm going, I could probably do that, right? So I think there's going to be a number of players. Deonta Foreman down there, Damian Harris, although we're, Jahmyr Gibbs. Who visited the Bills? A free agent visited the Bills today, I think. We'll see. Kareem Hunt, some bad reporting or some less than positive reporting on him that he has slowed down some. But there are players who I'm comfortable taking chances on. We'll find them. Wide receivers, there's getting to a point now where I think I find myself wishing I had waited on a lot of positions. I get into the 8th round and going, damn, I wish I had more open spots here because I feel like I've drafted everybody I already want. So maybe I don't need to start drafts until the 8th round. I feel a lot better. Quickly, Scott would like to know, who do you guys think could be this year's Josh Jacobs drafting in rounds 6 to 9 that will bring insane value? I think some of the guys we mentioned were it, like Connor, Montgomery for me as well. Jamie mentioned it. I don't think the team has not shown a lot of faith in DeAndre Swift, right? And maybe he could prove wrong. Obviously, he's an explosive playmaking threat, but this is one of the best offensive lines in football when it's healthy, and David Montgomery running behind that line, maybe getting the same kind of carries we saw. If he gets the 260 that we saw Jamal 262 that Jamal Williams got last year, that's going to be a pretty damn good workload for a running back going that late in the draft. So I think we both like some of those guys. Najee Harris is going right now. James Furrier is asking, and I'll just double check the ADP here. But he's going a little later. Like if I think I've got him in like the third round on occasion when I'm drafting receivers. Yeah, third round sounds about right to me. So yeah, there's plenty of players available. Look, Najee Harris, Breece Hall. Even if you don't think he's going to be ready early in the year, at some point he's going to be ready. Ramondre Stevenson was a top 10 back last year. Do I have concerns? Sure, but I mean he's available later. Tony Pollard, Dalvin Cook, and Joe Mixon are sliding. Javonte Williams. I don't have. Do you have any confidence at all in him, or is he like? Are there players you're avoiding, Jamie, at all costs? Because Javonte Williams is one I am. Alvin Kamara is another one. I just don't see the upside in taking a chance on them.
I have neither one in any team so far. Oh, that's not true. I took him in a mock I did on a show with Tyler FF Creator that was on his mock the other day. I took Javonte Williams because he fell to like the 9th or 10th round in that one. But, you know, at that point I couldn't let him fall anymore. But no, I'm not interested in him at all. I'm not interested in Alvin Kamara at all. I'm really not into Dameon Pierce. I just don't see with Singletary there, and I don't think they're done addressing running back either. But yeah, those two you mentioned, I'm with you. I don't have any right now so far.
So if we get out in the running back 2 or like 3 territory, we mentioned A.J. Dillon. Khalil Herbert's going that range. How about a forgotten man, Brian Robinson, right? Who I still think is going to be the primary back for the Commanders. Jamal Williams in that range. Rashad Penny talked to Chris Franklin from NJ.com, who thinks that Penny might be the guy. We'll see what the draft plays out. But if there is no selection there at the draft, he thinks a big workload is coming for Rashad Penny, a healthy Rashad Penny. Alexander Madison in that range, Kenneth Gainwell, I mentioned Deontay Foreman, Damian Harris, Elijah Mitchell. So there's plenty of, and by the way, if Miami doesn't do anything, you know, in best ball, you can find Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson right around the double digits or close to the double digit rounds. If you play your cards right, you get both of them in that later portion of a best ball. You've covered the Miami backfield. You know, you might want to wait until the draft to do that, but I can think of worse things there with a strong rushing attack. But the receivers, Jamie, a couple guys that I think are going really early that maybe, you know, I'm drafting, but I don't know if I have the great confidence. We mentioned Garrett Wilson is going super high. Running back, wide receiver 11. Going ahead of him, though, is Amon-Ra St. Brown. Jamison Williams will be in the mix more this year. How comfortable are you with Amon-Ra St. Brown as a top 10? He's number 9 right now in best ball ADP. How comfortable are you with that?
I was skeptical coming into this season. I'm skeptical no more. I mean, yeah, Jamison Williams is there, but DJ Chark is gone. I don't see any change in his role in this offense. Detroit's offense at home was a juggernaut last year. Amon-Ra was 3rd in targets per route run rate, 8th in red zone targets, 4th in yards after catch. I think he's top 10 with top 5 upside.
I'm totally with you there. I think he's the kind of guy, like if I get Tyreek Hill, who maybe I view as being a little boom bust, and I want to solidify. He's like the new Keenan Allen, right? The guy that's the leavening agent, a guy that comes in and has that higher floor and gives you the weekly consistent production. A couple questions here. Tyler Algier was PFF's number 1 graded rookie running back. I think Algier, I'm a little worried that there's going to be a draft pick here, but he is in that price range, Mike Anderson, for sure. And I don't think it's horrible. Mr. Scamper's first time since his rookie year, so I'm willing to draft Miles Sanders. I would agree with that. Miles Sanders might even agree with that. And that'd be a change. Dame overboard. I hate to say it, but I am fading Breece at cost for the track record of first-year return from injury. Look, if you were in on J.K. Dobbins and or Gus Edwards last year, you might have that same feeling. I'm a little concerned about that. And Dame kind of specified for redraft. And I think in best ball, you can kind of mitigate the risk a little bit. Maybe grab Michael Carter late. He's still going well into the double-digit rounds, or find somebody who maybe you get Rashad Penny a little later, who you think is going to stay healthy for a month, until Breece Hall gets back. But I would agree in redraft, I'm going to probably let someone else be the hero there for sure. Samaje Perine, we're going to talk about Denver here in a minute, so we'll get to that. But some of these wide receivers that I don't maybe feel as comfortable with, or I just have less certainty with, Jamie, and see if you share in that. We get down into and it's not like you're overpaying for them. Terry McLaurin at 21, wide receiver 21 right now. And I'm using best ball 10 ADP from the last month. So it kind of takes into account the free agency and any draft buzz people are hearing. Michael Pittman at 22, DJ Moore at 23, Mike Williams at 25. I like these. Mike Evans at 26, Chris Godwin at 27, Drake London at 28, Jerry Jeudy at 29. There's a whole range of players here I like, and I can see the upside, but I don't have confidence in. Is it okay not to have confidence in them when you're drafting them as I'm getting a lot of these guys as wide receiver threes, I'll be honest with you. And in that case, I feel pretty good, but how confident are you in some of these names that I mentioned?
Yeah, no, you kind of hit. I'm right there with you on all these. I mean, you gotta take into account that they're not the top end wide receivers who are quarterback, devoid of I can't think of the word, like devoid of who's the quarterback. Doesn't matter. Like Tyreek Hill is going to produce no matter who's throwing him the ball. Terry McLaurin is not that way. I mean, he exploded with Tyler Heineke as his quarterback, and he was non-existent with Carson Wentz as his quarterback. So who's going to be I mean, he did have a 33% target share from Sam Howell in the final week, but it's one game, so both Tampa Bay wide receivers, we don't know who's throwing them the ball this year. Mike Williams has the health issue. Drake London, we don't know the effectiveness of his quarterback. So, I mean, I'm with you there. If they're your wide receiver threes, I think they're volume based guys with upside if they're in the right situation. But if you went running back heavy or tight end heavy in the first few rounds and they're your wide receiver two, I'm not comfortable with that.
That's what it is. I'm fine with all those guys as my wide receiver three. I'm less so as my two, and we'll see how it plays out. Mike Anderson had a great question here. Deontay Johnson has been a great value. I'll ask you this, Jamie. Who are you more comfortable taking, Deontay Johnson or George Pickens, or does it maybe matter what you're trying to accomplish with that pick? They're going off right now, by the way, 32 and 33 respectively, Johnson and Pickens over the last month and a half of best ball.
Yeah, no, I think you're right with what you said there. I mean, it depends what kind of a team you're building there for. If he fits the volume-based floor play as a wide receiver three perfectly for me. I think if you've kind of let the draft slide by a little bit with respect to wide receivers and you're behind the eight ball, you can't pick Johnson to catch you up in ceiling. I think then you got to go with Pickens because he's got that exceptional yards per route run, the downfield advantage that he could he's got like the 10 to 12 touchdown upside, where as Deontay Johnson has your PPR floor.
And if you're looking for players, and we say this a lot around here at the Football Diehards website, you can build risk into your roster without having a risky roster, right? You can kind of pair up, like a Pickens. You want to have maybe some higher floor plays and hope that he comes through. Some other wide receivers that I like a little later that I think are getting reasonable values. We'll see Jameson Williams at 37. I'm not against that. I'm willing to play the upside. It was a narrow band last year, but impressive. Players like, I want to say KJ Osborne at 52. Looks like he's moving into a good position. Kadarius Toney, I might be willing to take a chance on at his current price, 43. Michael Thomas at 45. I can't let go of that either. Are there any good later plays that you want? And before I forget, Calvin Ridley's going off, I think, at around 21. Are you comfortable with that?
Yeah. I've been doing it quite a bit. I mean, the Jacksonville offense in general is something that I want to invest heavily in. And he should immediately become a key player. It's not like he was hurt, so he should immediately be a key playmaker for them. And his being there actually pushes Christian Kirk down fairly significantly for me. Even though I do like him too, I just think he's going a little bit higher. But yeah, I'm in on Ridley for sure.
All right, makes perfect sense. So a lot to like as these values change and kind of the fantasy landscape shifts to meet what the NFL's doing. Some other things that have happened here. Derek Carr goes to the Saints. Jimmy Garoppolo goes to the Raiders. These seem like kind of lateral, moves from the Raiders' perspective. I don't know if you see more upside there, but I do think it's an improvement for the Saints. Are you eager? Does this increase your confidence in Chris Olave? Are you more willing to take chances on Michael Thomas? Look, there's still questions to be answered about his health, but Juwan Thomas. What about Rashid Shaheed, one of the free squares that I've been grabbing in best ball?
Yeah, I think people are a little bit higher on Carr than they should be. He doesn't have any rushing ability. He never has. I mean, this is a guy who is a fine as a quarterback, but if you look in his 9 seasons, he's only been a top 12 quarterback once. And when he was top 12th, he was 12th. So I don't know what you want to look for when you're drafting him. The good news on him is, I mean, he's an upgrade across the board over Andy Dalton for sure. So his completed air yards, according to Next Gen Stats, was 9th in the NFL, whereas Andy Dalton was 18th. So I think he bodes very well for Chris Olave, who had a really good rookie campaign despite not really having a good quarterback. Carr has also been known to support the top end wideouts with like heavily targeting them. We saw that with Devontae Adams with 180 last year. So I do like Olave a lot. The other guys, it depends where they are for me. Rashid Shaheed is fine. I'm not going out of my way to get him because Michael Thomas, as of right now, is there. I mean, who knows if he's moved by the start of the season or if his health is going to kick him again. But I'm good with it. I'm not going out of my way for it though.
The Raiders, does Jimmy Garoppolo, does he change the value? I mean, obviously Devontae Adams still going as a first round play. But there's some changes around him. Jacoby Myers there. I don't know. Hunter Renfrow seems to have fallen off the map. Does this just seem to be setting up for another huge heavy use season for Josh Jacobs and Devontae Adams and nobody else?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't see why it wouldn't. I think, like you said at the beginning, it's a lateral move. He's a mid-range QB2. Devontae Adams is a top 5, top 6 wide receiver based on volume alone with the upside of his game-breaking ability. Josh Jacobs, I love as a second-round draft pick in best balls right now and in redraft. If he's my first running back off the board, I'm good with it in that round.
Totally agree. We've seen Trey Lance throw a pass. It was great. It was on Twitter. You couldn't miss it. It was like 8,000 times an hour. I was seeing that in my timeline. The comparison to last year's motion to this year's motion. He's working out or training with Patrick Mahomes. This all seems great. How are you approaching the 49ers quarterback situation if you're approaching it all right now? Or is this more for you like, I'll wait and see?
It's a wait and see right now. I haven't been taking any of them. I would not be surprised at all if, depending on how quickly Brock Purdy recovers. I mean, we saw what's his face, and the other 49ers quarterback, I can't remember his name. He had the same procedure a couple of years ago. What's his name? He's on. He's like a third stringer on some team like the Raiders now too. I won't think of it.
Nick Mullins or
Nick Mullins. No, Mullins. Yeah. Mullins. I mean, he had the exact same procedure done. And he was cleared to return in 5 months. So that's the scenario. Then Purdy is around in August to make it even more of a question. I mean, I have no qualms in saying that considering where they are right now and the fact that they're kind of a system anyway, not who's the quarterback. I mean, I don't see why they wouldn't just let someone win that competition between Purdy, Lance, and Sam Darnold. So I don't have any of them right now.
Darnold. I'm kind of laying back. I think Purdy's the default, but it's all based on his health, and there's just not noble right now. So I am avoiding there. Same thing with Kyler Murray. I'm buying no shares of Kyler Murray right now. We don't know if it'll be week 10, week 1, week 17, if at all. We did hear, though, today that Colt McCoy might be ready, which we hadn't been hearing up to this point. DeAndre Hopkins' future seems, in Arizona at least, seems to be a thing of the past. Is there anything there you're investing in not named James Conner?
Nope. No, not at all. And Colt McCoy would help for sure. He's at least an able quarterback in conducting an offense. But I think the Arizona team in general this year is going to be a must miss from both fantasy and real football perspective for me. And even Connor. I mean, Connor at cost, like you mentioned, is good, but I don't know. I don't know that he's going to be a game breaking running back that I want either.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be a game breaker, but the price that you're getting is good. Andrea, going
Yeah.
back, had a question about Debo. Are we still pretty comfortable drafting Debo? I see him going maybe a little later than I would expect, and I see myself not getting a lot of shares because I like other receivers in that range. He's going at wide receiver 15. I kind of prefer DK Metcalf, Devontae Smith going off just ahead of him. Maybe Olave and Keenan Allen going off right after him. I like Amari Cooper an awful lot too. We're going to talk about that. Where are you at on Debo at wide receiver 15? Is that a buy or a pass for you?
I'm right there with you. The four guys or Smith, Metcalf, Olave, I think you mentioned. I like them all better. Keenan Allen definitely better. Take Debo over Amari Cooper, but yeah, I'm with you. I'm fine if he winds up on my team, but not going out of my way to get him.
I'm just going to say right now, I'm not here for the Amari Cooper slander. We're not going to have any of that, sir. Well, let's get to that. We'll get to that in a second. Patriots offense, another one where I'm finding it hard to invest in players not named Ramondre Stevenson, and even then, I don't think I'm really confident investing in Ramondre Stevenson. I know he was a top 10 back last year. Why am I scared of him, and should I be running towards him and not away from him?
No, he's another one that I'm fine with and not going out of my way. But, I mean, he, for me, falls into another one of kind of the theme we've been talking about where, why would I take him here when I can get so-and-so later on? I mean, I'll take James Robinson in the 14th round over Ramondre Stevenson in the 3rd round 10 out of 10 times. I do like Ramondre Stevenson. He's talented. He's an able pass catcher, so he can do a lot. But, yeah, at cost, I'm fine letting him slip by and taking Robinson. Why can't he be the Damian Harris role for them this year? And you're getting him free.
I feel like a similar situation for me for the Buffalo Bills. Like it's Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, and if I have to, maybe Dawson Knox at the right point. I'm not eagerly drafting any other pieces. Now we have Damian Harris in that backfield along with James Cook, who seem to be going fairly high now. I think people have dialed back on him. Is this still that narrow band, barring the acquisition or arrival of some big piece that we haven't seen yet? I'm looking at you, DeAndre Hopkins.
Yeah. Oh my God. Can you imagine that? The extent of the offense if they have him. I mean, one thing they haven't had is a trustworthy wide receiver 2. Imagine that guy as a wide receiver 2 on a Josh Allen led team.
I do. I imagine it a lot.
Oh, my friend will be abysmal to talk to every day of the year. No, I'm with you. It's Allen Diggs, but I think I'm higher on Damian Harris than you or most people here. I think kind of like the James Robinson talk. I mean, he's only 26 still, Damian Harris, and I think he found a perfect spot for him because the one thing the Bills cannot do is let Josh Allen continue to lower his head at the goal line and take these shots that he's taken. I mean, they're invested in him, and to me, Damian Harris is the perfect person to take that away. We've seen Harris be a touchdown machine in a way less efficient offense than Buffalo has. So I actually really like him at where he's going in drafts.
Royal Slade and Hello Royal mentions in the chat Gesicki now with the Patriots, a free square that he's interested in. I kind of admit that I am too, although I'm hesitant because I feel like a successful season would be having to watch more of his gritties, and I can't stand that. So, but I do think maybe he's in a good spot. And yes, Mr. Scampers is a Harris fan, and don't sell me short. I always support all the Harrises. My cousins must do well, and I do think Damian's in a good spot for the reason you said. And the price is right, so I'm not against him.
For Gesicki, I'm kind of with you. I mean, I'm kind of thinking of other at that point in the draft. I like Juwan Johnson a little bit better than him. I like Chig from Tennessee better than him too. So I haven't found myself with
the draft
much than him. Yeah, no, Oh, you're right. Yeah, maybe not. Oh no, actually, you're right. So maybe I'm off base with that thing too. So I mean, if Gesicki falls far enough, I'm good with him. I like him better than say Gerald Everett, who is near there, and Trey McBride, something like that. I'll take Gesicki over those guys for sure.
I think we're going to talk about rookies in a second, but I think everyone is projecting Dalton Kincaid to the Chargers, so I think we're all thinking positive thoughts there. So they don't take Bijan, and Eckler is still good. A lot of things that I like about that one. Does it matter who plays wide receiver in Kansas City, Jamie?
It clearly doesn't. I mean, I think they proved that beyond a shadow of a doubt. I shouldn't say that. I mean, as long as Travis Kelce is Travis Kelce, it doesn't matter. I do think that they're going to have to, they got to revamp again with Juju Smith-Schuster leaving. Richie James,
They
I'm gonna
brought
miss
in
that
Richie
guy.
James. Come on, man.
He was a little dog of war underneath for us for a little while there. I mean, he dropped some. He was an adventure every time they punted the ball to him, but he caught his 5-6 balls. I think he's in a nice spot there. But no, I don't think it matters who is in the Kansas City offense as long as Patrick Mahomes is your quarterback. I don't really have a favorite outside of Kelce who I'd draft as a wide receiver, but it doesn't really matter. Mahomes is Mahomes.
Correct on all points. Your confidence level in Tua Tagovailoa, and if it's lacking at all, is Mike White a viable plan B or a late round pick for you?
I don't have much Tua right now. I'm, the dad/teacher in me cannot understand why he's even going to play football. I have him once or twice, and I handcuffed him with Mike White both times, and I reached to do that, and I'm fine with reaching to do that. Mike White is a perfectly viable backup, as he's shown he can handle an offense. I think if you're taking Tua, you have to take Mike White.
I'm with you on that one as well. Confidence level in Deshaun Watson. We had mentioned Amari Cooper a little earlier. I find him to be a good value, and I'll address this a little bit more. But your confidence level that Deshaun Watson turns back into the Deshaun Watson of old.
Yeah, it's. I mean, he's a buy low candidate for sure. I mean, if I'm looking, you're talking redraft. I mean, if you're looking where he is, he's got a lot of room to unlock value. I mean, your guy there, right. Amari Cooper is looking at somebody now, for a full steal. Watson had rust for sure. I think Cleveland needs to add another weapon. I don't think Elijah Moore is a nice little get for them, but I don't think that's enough. Cooper and Njoku is a little too streamlined in offense. I think if they added a field stretcher, whether in whatever is left in free agency,
this is the real question here. This is the question that becomes obvious.
I know. I don't. I used him a few times. He won me some good DFS money towards the end of the season. I got to give him his credit for that. But no, I think before 2022, his lowest finish was QB5 overall. So he can't have forgotten how to play football. I mean, rust was evident. He'd been out of there for a while. He's got a full off season to work with his receivers. I think he's a good play.
So many jokes there that I will not make. So a few questions here before we get out. And I just want to say, some of the things like we talked about receivers and how we're a little concerned about the quarterback situation. I'm trying to maybe dial that back a little bit after some lessons learned last year with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett faring better than I expected without a quarterback, with Amari Cooper faring better than I expected. We go into situations where we think like Washington with Terry McLaurin. Do I want to draft him? No, but am I running away? Not completely, because maybe it's going to be better than I think. So that's kind of just one of the things I'm looking at here. A few questions to clean up that came up while we were talking. Eagles passing game this coming season, same or more volume? Jamie Calandro, the question goes to you.
I mean, I don't think it's any different, but I mean, it was just so elite and so efficient. I'll say same, and I'm heavily invested in it, as I should have been more of last year. I have always underrated AJ Brown to my own demise, and I'm not doing that again this year.
Yeah, and don't overlook Devontae Smith is a damn good player. He's a Heisman Trophy winner. They tell me that's a good thing in college. Also, he caught a lot of balls last year. I think they've got a really good 1A, 1B situation there. And any given week, either of them could flop that A and B. The number one wide receiver in Kansas City, not named Travis Kelce, is
Tony, I guess. But I don't know. They're they're a tough call. He's known to spread the ball around. Tony will be my answer for right now.
I would agree with that. Is Sky Moore worth a flyer in the late rounds?
Sure. If he's your 6th, 7th wide receiver, anything with wide receiver, KC is worth a late round flyer in drafts.
Except Justin Ross. We want to see some of that before we start investing in it.
I like Justin him Watson, too, maybe. As a late round flyer. Watson. Sorry.
I was talking. Yeah, but also Ross, I had heard some talk, last year he was kind of one of those, happening guys with the drafty people and, had the injury issues, and that's what kept him off the field. But I heard some people talk to people who were at training camp last year who never really saw what they thought they were going to see out of him. So that's a little time. Give the ball to Nicholas Chubb. You're welcome, Cleveland. That's a good look there. Works for them. A couple thoughts before we close out. By the way, if you just came in here and you did not know, this is Jamie Calandro. He's fantastic. You should be following him on Twitter at JAC3600. He's the senior analyst and president of operations at Fantasy Team Advice. You can follow them on Twitter at Fan Team Advice. He's a DFS analyst here at Football Diehards. You should go to that website. It's fantastic. All kinds of great things are there. Use the promo code Diehards to get a discount, 15% off. The updates on Ross's health are, Dame Overboard had that question, and there was nothing. It's been radio silence, according to Pete Sweeney at Arrowhead Pride. So that's worth noting there. Ryan, keeper defense, keeper question, full point, keep one. Amon-Ra in the 3rd or Olave in the 8th?
Olave is the better value.
He is the way better value. I'd have a hard time getting rid of Amon-Ra. I guess if this is a keeper, it's only a certain amount of time anyway. So, the value is there and maybe you can still get Amon-Ra back if you grab him.
Yeah.
Right. That's a tough call. Rookies this year, your approach with them, Jamie, are you a little more willing to dive into the rookie pool than I am, but I think it's been a low bar because I usually avoid the rookies until, even after the draft.
I usually do too. Once the draft is over, I can kind of assess after that. I've always been less on rookies than most, just because of how different the NFL game. It's not the NBA where a college guy can immediately come in and be a superstar. I mean, the Justin Jeffersons are not the rule; they're the exception. So I do like Smith and Jigba a lot based on his college profile. I think Bijan Robinson is going way overdrafted for my take right now, and I'm probably making a lot of enemies saying that, but I just can't spend a 2nd round pick on a guy who has not played a down in the NFL yet when Josh Jacobs and Kenneth Walker and even Najee Harris and Travis Etienne, people like that, are on the board. So I notoriously have a slow approach to rookies.
By the way, notorious Trojans fan Dame Overboard says always ARSB. She would not be alone in that opinion. Our friend Dwayne McFarland over at Fantasy Life, among others. Can't get enough of him. And I'm just like, the list is long of people who are all in. And I do think that's a tough one, though. Because Amon-Ra, he's, 3rd round is a really great value for him. It's just that Olave in the 8th, you're adding so much, and hopefully you can, make up for that lost value. I've been like, I tend to dial back on rookies until they get a helmet on. I mentioned I'm in a Superflex Dynasty draft where we actually draft before the draft, right? We draft, the rookie draft is before the draft. I don't know why. I blame Scott Barrett. It was his evil plan. Thank you, Scott.
Gives me anxiety just to think about that.
That's horrifying. But for the most part, I do. I think we're going to be a little more willing to at least chase the rookies based on recent successes. The receivers, even the ones that aren't the high-end guys, they're coming in more pro-ready than ever. And I think once we know where the landing spots are, if we see opportunities, I think I'll be a little more willing to dive in.
Yeah, me too. And the receivers especially, they don't have to worry about, with the running backs, you got other things than just, they were fast in college. You got to worry about pass protection and whatnot. The receivers I'm a lot more comfortable in than say the running backs and the tight ends in the NFL for sure.
Yeah. All right, then. So there you have it. Thank you for coming, Andrea. Appreciate it. You have a good night, and the rest of you all have a good night. I'll remind you, Saturday night, 7 to 9 p.m. I will be flying the Diehards series program solo. I will have guests. It'll be great. We'll have Cardinals and Colts beat writers. Travis May will come on to talk rookies with me. Appreciate his efforts, and we'll do a regular show it'll be a Dempsey-free edition. By the way, before we get you out of here, JB, Scott Kobe wants to know your top 3 rookie receivers.
Top 3, as of right now, I have Smith and Jigba, Addison, Johnston in that order.
I also have the same 3 in that order, and I believe that's also Laub's order. I'll have to double check that. Go to the website and check it out. John Laub's got his articles up there with all his top receivers. But remember, after this week, when we're heading into the draft, there will be a ton of football diehards on the Sirius channel. It'll be the Monday night before the draft. Thursday night, Dempsey and I, along with Ratcliffe and Hansen, will be handling the first round coverage on Sirius Thursday. That'll be 8 to midnight. Friday night, I will be out of in live coverage, but I'll do the post. 11 to midnight, I'll be flying solo on that program. Then Saturday, Dempsey and I will be covering, I think, from 4 to 7 p.m. So a lengthy bout with us, and we'll be doing the first post-draft draft with the hosts. We'll be hosting that on Sirius from 5 to 7 Eastern time on Sirius. Then we'll do a Monday night wrap-up again from 10 to midnight. So be plenty of diehards for all of you. And the live stream, I'll be back on Saturday. We're going to do a mock draft, people. Watch your emails. Get ready for that link. We'll get you in there. It'll be on Sleeper. So if you don't have your Sleeper account, get it set up. Andrea crushed the last draft. We'll see who crushes this one. I'm Bob Harris. He's Jamie Calandro. We will call it a night. Thanks again, everyone, for coming. We'll see you here. And if you're not subscribed to this channel, do it now. Good night.